welcome to this episode of Addis Dialogue, broadcasting to you through Ethiopian language channel. In this edition, we raise some issues in connection to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and the Nile issues. And in this edition, we have guests from the Addis University and from the Oromia Water Resource Bureau. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
First, give us a self-introduction in brief, please.
Yeah, I'm Fasabulu from Addis University. Basically, I'm working on water resource related activities, and my area of expertise is entirely related with water resource.
And Dr. Atam?
Okay, I'm Atam Wittafa. Previously, I was in Addis University. Then currently, I'm working as the Bureau Head of Oromia Water Source and Energy Development Bureau. Actually, from profession-wise, I graduated from Addis University in Irrigation Engineering and has been teaching in the university in Addis University, as well. I have done a lot of research on area of water balance, watershed management, and hydrology. So,
all right. Since the commencement of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in 2011, since that time onward, there was serious contentious negotiations between the riparian countries, mainly between Ethiopia, the Sudan, and Egypt. Particularly, the argument between Ethiopia and Egypt is fierce, especially since the announcement of Ethiopia to fill the dam's reservoir in the coming July, next month. The debate has become so serious. So how did you find it? Egypt is still fighting, wants to hinder Ethiopia from filling the reservoir of the dam. The Egypt water minister has said Ethiopia cannot unilaterally fill the reservoir of the dam. They say the three countries must agree on the filling of water to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. So, do you think that is it fair and Ethiopia needs to wait until they come to agreement? Please.
At different times, there has been an attempt to use our water source, and from our Egyptian brothers, there have been an attempt not to use the water in a different way, long time ago. So that is S3. Then after we start in 2011 building the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, there has been an attempt how to hinder, how to make international community misguided that Ethiopia should stop, even starting of the dam. Whatever the case, due to our successful diplomacy and every aspect of the win-win approach discussions that has been done so far, the dam has been done and now is at the stage of filling the dam. So the issue, the case that the Egyptians are arising is not an event that happened today. It has some historical trend that we are facing and that we have been passing that successfully. So currently, when they are saying the tripartite agreement, the three countries should reach an agreement with Ethiopia side, no problem to sit and discuss. But when someone is coming to say, you have no right to use your resource, or you need some blessing to use your resource, that will be an issue. When we are dealing especially with the filling of the reservoir, of course, when we as Ethiopian, where we are considering of the dam, we are not ignoring the Egyptians or Sudanese brothers as well. Because the purpose of this dam is not for consumptive use. Consumptive use is where we minimize the amount of water.
The issue of the GERD, it has to be carefully underlined. It is a non-water consuming project. And the other thing, it has also a lot of benefits for the downstream countries. We have shown that, just taking the case of Takazi as an example.
Do you think that Ethiopia has all the right to fill the reservoir without the consent of Egypt and the Sudan?
Ethiopia has not requested to fill the dam without the consent of Egypt and the Sudan. We have shown our interest even to invite them to finance the project or to cooperate with us.
I
And
mean, if they fail to agree, is there a possibility for Ethiopia to fill the reservoir?
filling the reservoir for me is the simplest task, I would say, because we have shown, look, the volume of water that we are going to fill in the dam is not throughout the year. It's only during the wet season, the rainy season. And as you know, the rainy season of this country is between July to September, and 70% of the flow is during that period. And we are not taking the entire flow during that period even. We are going to take only a small amount, nearly 4.5 billion cubic meter for the rainy season. So there is no reason to request for a kind of permission from the third party.
The Egyptians are saying the negotiation should start from the agreement made in Washington. They have denied everything that has been done so far, and they have ignored the Declaration of Principles, and they have ignored the Cooperative Framework Agreement, and all the efforts that has been made so far. They want to start the negotiations beginning from the agreement they have got from the Washington Accord. So what do you recommend?
Okay.
What is your suggestion on this stance?
Yeah, actually they say so, but if we go back to the date the GRD was started, there has been series of negotiations, panels that has been done. What's the reason to cut off the threshold at Washington? That's an issue. They need to start from the first day when we had international panel of experts was first established. That is how, by the time the dam was started, they start to complain. They start to lobby around to the globe and the different donors that Ethiopia is making something that will be affecting the interest of Egyptians. So for that, Ethiopia was willing, and they came around the table. And they say, okay, let's discuss, let's talk. What's the gap? What's the problem? By that time, really, Ethiopia had a good initiative and supportive. Still, we are on the same trend. Then after declaration of the principles, the OP, which was in March 2015, on that time also Ethiopia was actively engaged. Then after, they had tripartite national committee that was already established, and by that time the French experts, when they tried to see, the Egyptians came with another parameter, that the environmental issue should be described based upon the current approach. By that time also we didn't accept it. They said okay. And now that is what is going on anyway. Just to tell the trend that in every step of discussion they try to put a kind of obstacle, a kind of a way how to retard or how to make the things not to happen. So if we need to say the three countries need to discuss, we need to go for discussion. There is no justification only to discuss with the benchmark of the Washington issue. It shall start from what we have been doing so far, and there is no legal background to take that one as a basis.
The Washington discussion came with new annex. In the first 2-3 discussion, the point raised were somehow on good agreement. But after the final one, they sent us the agreement should be based on prolonged drought mitigation, dry year period mitigation, and drought mitigation. In science, drought has only one meaning. We should not split the words. And if we go for that prolonged drought or dry year period, we are not talking about the GERD. We are talking about the water sharing in the entire Nile. It's a water allocation issue. Because drought is not a characteristic of a reservoir. Drought is a characteristic of a catchment. For that technical reason, that document or the agreement which was prepared in Washington is valueless in my view.
On the coast of the Nile.
Yeah.
They don't accept Ethiopia to build a dam on the Nile. So how come nations like Egypt, which has no contribution for the source of the Nile, it's Ethiopia who contributes almost 85% of the Nile water flowing to Sudan and Egypt. But Egyptians are not happy with Ethiopia to erect the dam. So how come nations like Ethiopia, do you think that they find it difficult for Ethiopia to erect the dam on the Nile?
I think two things we need to be clear. If we talk in terms of technical issue, it's simple mathematics. When we say it's simple mathematics, 86% of the river, the Nile, is getting contributed from Ethiopia, and that is joining to them. And so far, they have been using the water as they like, creating a lot of reservoirs everywhere, building their groundwater potential, while Ethiopia was every time losing their fertile land and contributing a lot for the downstream country. So it's by fate or by chance that we may need some another issue to talk about that. So far we didn't use anyway. We didn't use about the water. When we are defining this country as a sovereign country, that is what I tried to say at the beginning. We have full right to use our resource. Water is one of them. So this Blue Nile water that is going to the downstream is our right when we are saying, we are not saying we are abusing the downstream users' right also. How do we were using this water for irrigation? Yes, there may be a question. Because the volume of the amount of water that shall be supplied to the downstream would be minimized. It's not the case. So when someone is from a professional point of view, if they can really see with a genuine mind, they could have said, okay. But for some unknown reason, they don't want. Ethiopia should not be accountable for any drought that will happen in the globe, in Egypt, in Ethiopia as well. So taking into that account, the dam needs to be built. Of course, we don't need to harm the downstream parts.
If the GERD is built, it brings lots of changes to the country. It's believed to change the game, socio-economic development of this country. What do you reflect on that?
Take the water supply and sanitation coverage in Ethiopia. Still, we are at a very low level. Take the case of food security. We are at very low level. Even there are some foods that we are importing from outside. And then the energy that we are going to produce, we are not saying we have to use for ourselves. We have indicated in the DOP. We can sell as a priority to them also. Then if we think of that kind of win-win situation and a clear cooperative framework, the solution is not really as such a big challenge. Rather, if we say think of bringing the young group, because the technology is changing, and in the past, say back to 100 or 200 years back, the hydro science is not as such significant. But these days, the hydro is becoming a big science. And tomorrow, there will be new technology which will appear from the young group of the citizens of the basin. Then we should really think of what is going to left for those generations and how can we link those generations from upstream and downstream. If we think of that way, then the solution is really very simple and clear in my view.
And Egyptians are saying that the Nile is the one and the only source of water for the Egyptians. But Egypt is surrounded by water in the Mediterranean, in the Red Sea, in the Suez Canal, and also it has huge amount of underground water.
Indeed.
How unfair is Egypt for claiming it has only one source, which is the Nile?
Yeah. But my point on that is, look, let us see from 4 directions. Number one, what is their water use efficiency? They are wasting much of the water with evaporation as well as with loss through depercolation. Nearly, only on the depercolation part, nearly 9 billion cubic meter of water is lost every year. On the evaporation, nearly 10 billion cubic meter of water. Come back to the availability of the groundwater. That is the second point. On the groundwater, there are ample and huge groundwater source in the basin. In terms of figure, maybe Dr. Aklamo can mention some of the figures. The third point, they are bordering the Mediterranean Sea. And the issue that comes most of the time, no, that is saline water. No. According to World Bank study, they can refer that, the desalination cost is dramatically declining. It's nearly 0.65 cents per meter cube of water. And the fourth, which is actually tricky, the blue water availability in the basin, when we compare Egypt with Ethiopia, they have quite significant available water, blue water availability. What we see from upper side is the green water, because the blue water is the one that you can economically abstract from the source. So considering these four sources, the shortage of water that is told most of the time in the media is somehow not based on scientific justification. That's what we are, as a scientist or as a technical person in that sector, in the water sector, we know that challenge. Even they know that challenge. And that is the true. And they have also published a quite significant number of papers on that.
For example, when we are talking with Great Ethiopian Dam, we are using for power, for energy. If we try to see the energy coverage in Egypt, take it rural area, urban area, almost 100% they have electrification. In Ethiopia, it's less than 50%, around 42 or something. Even in rural area, it's less than 20%, around 20 or 22%. So those poor villagers, poor mother, family, living in the countryside are no alternative energy source. They go for deforestation. That deforestation is what is getting happen in the upstream, and it will impact the Egyptians itself. Because when we don't have any appropriate forest cover in Ethiopia, then we have no option of water than Nile. Unless somebody can see such kind of really long-term vision, there is no justification to say Ethiopia has no right. I think we need to develop the energy, supply our rural villagers, then let have alternative energy for that, maintain the watershed, maintain the catchment, maintain the country, and even Nile will have life. I think the Egyptians need to understand, and they didn't miss that. With regard to their potential, the groundwater, for example, they have high. If we take with a clear mind, even the advantage of constructing the dam, filling the dam, and the impact it will have in Ethiopia, in other way, it will be supporting the Egyptians and the Sudanese brothers, and there is no reason, no legal background to say no right to fill the dam.
And how about signing agreements for Ethiopia to exercise its right of using the natural resources? Is there any need for Ethiopia to sign an agreement in order to use its resources?
I mean, signing your resource with someone, there is no such kind of language, by the way. That is what we're saying.
Because they are demanding.
That's what they are demanding. Yeah. Look, there is some problem, you know. When they think Nile is their gifted by God, it's their sole right to use that. And I'm sorry to say, maybe from their school age, the children in schools, they might have been taken that this Nile is just only from Egypt. I think the intellectuals, the professors, the researchers, the scientists need to address to our Egyptian brother that there is a right, there's international water right. By the way, it's not in Ethiopia, there are different practices. The upstream countries, they use their water in such a way that both sides can get benefited. Nowhere in the country, the downstream is hindering the upstream not to use water source. So there is no such kind of legal issue. They have a right to insist us to sign that agreement.
I think the source country must drink first.
Indeed. And yeah, just to reflect on that, on the signing of any agreement. We have to understand even the feeling of Ethiopians. Even an ordinary person from the Ethiopian side, no one is saying, I have to use only for myself. That is the way we grew up. We like to live with our neighbors, even from our childhood. And then when it comes to the neighboring countries, we prepared a CFA. That is an agreement. And we also came with the DOP, that is an agreement. And then on the way of filling, also we have claimed for 13 agreement. We are not closed nation. But the signing of the agreement should be iterated carefully. The content and the type of agreement matters. If it is going to affect the national interest, if it is going to affect the equitable use of water, the fair use of water, the reasonable use of water, that is not acceptable.
Currently, Ethiopia has taken steps to plant around 5 billion seedlings. Yeah. That's very interesting, if done well. But there is a challenge in the course of the Nile, in the Lake Tana. It's affected by water, I see.
Yeah.
So there is a challenge there, and degraded lands are there. So how do you think that both challenges can be tackled well? Otherwise, building the dam may not be enough.
Okay, thank you. I think before going to the challenge, something I missed was earlier with the water balance at all. We said they have sufficient groundwater, a number that I try to mention. If we see the outflow of the Nile to the Mediterranean, around 150 meter cube per second amount of water is going out. These people, they say nothing about that. That could have been used even for other purpose. But if we come to Ethiopia, it's the reverse way anyway. That will help for more justification. With regard to the natural resource, the initiative our country is currently taking, especially the green initiative that is being done, it's really in one or the other way it will be contributing to the entire water balance of East Africa. So by the way, not only for Ethiopia. Even the neighboring countries need to appreciate, they need to support if they understand. Our Sudanese brothers, Egyptians, and everybody should welcome such kind of initiative and support the policy. With regard to the dam, yes, if we don't go for such kind of natural resource conservation, what we do as a water storage reservoir will be a sediment trapping reservoir. So it will be a dead structure. A dead structure means with no function, collecting the entire sediment that is getting deposited from the highlands of our country. When we are developing the upstream side, the catchment, the watershed, the basins, especially by the seedlings and the planting that we do, we are going to conserve the soil. Conserving the soil on the upstream means maintaining the reservoir capacity of our dam, even including the Egyptian dam.
When we think of transboundary water, we are not only talking about the surface water, but also the groundwater is another transboundary issue. And what we replenish from here is what they are going to get from the downstream, if we think of the deep aquifer systems. Then in view of that, if we don't forest our highlands, or if you don't cover our highlands with significant number of size of forests, replenishment of the groundwater system is impossible. That's one thing. And then protecting the forest is possible, but not based on theory. It has to be practically implemented. That practical implementation is only possible if the habitants or if the people who are living there have got the essential daily basic needs. So that's why if you look at our rural people, they are cutting a lot of trees. That we can't blame them. But now this initiative, the 5 billion tree initiative, if it is well implemented, that will bring significant change in the hydrologic process and hydrologic system of the upstream part, and then definitely to the downstream part also.
Dr. Sabohulu from the Addis University, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And Dr. Abtam Mitafa from Oromia Water Resource Bureau, thank you very much for your candid explanation and for your time here. Well, dear viewers, that's all of the program's edition. See you next time with yet another edition of the program, Addis Dialogue. Goodbye.